Hello all, Old Geek here, and we're browsing the Dragon once again. We're up to issue number 23. Now I know my ugly mug is blocking the corner of this bit at the moment in the video, but this is volume 3, number 9, March 1979, priced at $2. Right. The cover. 23 is in a horrible font, hard to see. A white background, pale colouring, very orange and red. The last issue was a really good issue from a nerdy point of view. It had lots of juicy nerd info in it regarding historical warfare and stuff like that. Brilliant for that purpose, but it had the worst cover I think I've seen of a magazine for a long time. This could only be better. It's not brilliant, but it's better. It has a fantastical element to it. Would it jump off the shelf? More than the previous one. Right, the Things in the Tomb. Is that meant to say anew? Is that a bad scan? And now Swords and Sorcery, story from Gardner Fox. I'm guessing that. I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt because it might just be a bad scan. En Garde, Solitaire. The permanent effects of wounds in D&D. Okay, this is a topic that's often covered in games. People like having permanent scarring. People just like to have hit points as being an abstraction. Well, we'll see. We'll see how it works. We'll see how it works. I quite like it from a story point of view because characters that have been through the mill should have both emotional and physical scars to show for it, and it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to help develop the character. But you got to get it right. The army of Mugolavia from Walpartha. Okay. Hoping that's a bad scan as well because it's a bloody awful advert. Too empty. Very empty. Give us something dynamic, Walpartha, with these adverts. Rather than just show us bad photos of figures in very generic poses. Fourth dimension, the game of time and space. Not really my thing, as you know. So we go to the contents page. The editorial is talking about convention season approaching. And as you can see, look, continued on page 21. They're still doing it. Still doing it. Right. Sorcerer's Scroll, Dungeons and Prisons, Things from the Tomb. It weighs what? Good news for the gaming hobby. Convention schedule, Gen Con status report. En Garde in Solitaire. Mind Wrestling. Okay. Water Adventures on the Starship Warden. Damage Permanency. Looks like there's quite a good balance of articles in this one. I mentioned in the read through of the last White Dwarf how they were really trying to balance the articles out, but with so much of the 28 pages of White Dwarf being taken up by advertising, you got about 3 or 4 pages that might be applicable to any one genre, and it didn't feel like enough. So the balance of page count of advertising matters here, as of course does the quality of the articles. But this looks... There's a lot of articles here, so it looks promising. En Garde in Solitaire by George Laking. Unique among role players currently marketed is the game En Garde. Okay, so it's talking about a specific game. Its unique flavour stems from the fact that it is designed mainly for solitaire play. The game system is laid out in flowchart fashion, making it easy for the solitary gamer to guide his character through a month's actions in a yes-no manner. Will Anand court mistress? Yes or no? If no, go to Bawdy House this week. If yes, pay courting fee and roll the dice. Choose your own adventure. An early... Might be worth me having a look at this if I can find it anywhere. Because if you haven't seen, I mean, I have a regular Friday night stream where we do a relaxed read through of various choose your own adventures, fighting fantasy. We've done Call of Cthulhu ones, and we've done some. We did Dracula, we did Beowulf, and there's fun to be had because when you're sat by yourself in your room being a nerd, you can sit and play by yourself. But yeah, there's certainly a genre in the 80s which was popular, and it still has some steam nowadays. The Endless Quest books, of course. I read those. I didn't really go deep into those when I was a kid. I was about 11 or 12, read half a dozen of them, and then moved on to really just wanting to play D&D or the Fighting Fantasy books, which of course had dice rolling in, which I really wanted. I didn't want to just be choosing an option. But they have their place, and this On Guard looks like it's an early form of doing that as a game system. The only point one guard system breaks down is the cumbersome rules for fighting a duel. Okay, right. Yeah, solitaire games generally need to be simple. Generally need to... yeah, my brain... If they weren't simple, my brain would just want to go and do something else. So it might be worth coming back and having a look at this. Find that... I find Choose Your Own Adventures, solitaire gaming, interesting to a degree. But for me, there does need to be a story there to engage me. It's why I like, for example, the Fighting Fantasy book House of Hell. It was tough as anything, but it had a good atmosphere and story about it. 10 years ago, this writer remembers attending a trade show in which the Avalon Hill Company was the only exhibitor showing games. Hardly a trade show, is it? It's the Avalon Hill Company show. It's the list of all the companies that were there. Well, it's good, it's growing. Yeah, it's a sign that it's growing. And of course, we go into an advert for Gen Con. Gen Con 12. The Thing from the Tomb. This is the cover art. Same artist, same style by the looks of things. Nice and colourful. But it's fiction, so I'm going to plough through it. Yeah, it's split up, of course. Mind Wrestling. A variation of psionic combat. I do quite like these little cartoon figures. They're quite good. Psionics, one of those love them or hate them aspects of D&D. They should have been so rare with player characters, and of course they were necessary for certain monsters to be applicable. Your Mind Flayer, your Intellect Devourer, and to properly bring out the fury of extraplanar creatures. But the rules themselves were always a little bit odd. And did you really want to play a psionic character? Because it's more trouble than it's worth. If you were the only psionic in the party and you came up against decent psionic opponents, you were dead. You were dead. But the powers, there were some good powers in there, but it really was a risk. So somebody's trying to rewrite psionics. Not got a problem with that. TSR Minicon. Water Adventures on the Starship Warden. Okay. Metamorphosis Alpha. Right, okay. Not my thing. There's been a few things said in this edition that have been not my thing. Hopefully we'll soon get to things that are more my thing. I mean, yeah, maybe my thing should be a little bit wider. I don't know. I like what I like, don't I? Like what I like. Adverts, Grenadier models. Watch out for Dark Tower coming soon. My Goodman Games version of Dark Tower is coming soon, allegedly. It weighs what? Some notes on armour for fantasy gamers. There exists in fantasy gaming today a great deal of misunderstanding about the weight of armour. In Dungeons and Dragons, approximately 15 to 20 extra pounds are added to plate armour. FGUs, chivalry and sorcery is even worse. The statement that full plate armour weighs 2/3 of the wearer's body weight is blatant nonsense. Well, that is correct. I think the idea is that pure weight is not the factor here. It's the encumbrance. I mean, look at the two-handed sword. Two-handed swords weighed, what, 2 to 4 pounds? A regular sword, like an arming sword, in reality, weighed a couple of pounds at most. But yet in D&D, you see the encumbrance is always a lot higher. And various other games, because you take into account the shape and the ease of transportation of the object. Spears were light. A lot of polearms were quite light. But they're awkward to carry around. So that's what it is. I mean, if you're wearing armour, you should be able to... It is going to affect your movement. But then again, we've seen people do recreation videos where to see how an armoured person would get on a horse, how they'd move, and they can do it fairly fluidly. Of course, you've got to be good at doing it, but you do it fairly fluidly. So I wonder if there's a few misconceptions about how much effect armour had on our ability to move. But of course, there's got to be the downsides. I mean, the games are... We hate the word balance, but games are about balance. So you have a lightly armoured character... and if donning plate armour didn't have a great deal of effect encumbrance-wise, manoeuvrability-wise, then why would anyone pick the lightly armoured option? So mechanical terms, having that differentiation is a good thing. Search for the Nile at the Dungeon Hobby Shop. From the Sorcerer's Scroll, random generation of creatures from the lower planes. This, of course, would be expanded upon in later books. We saw some of this in, Manual of the Planes especially, but there was some of this in Dungeon Master's Guide as well. And I like extraplanar creatures. Devils in particular, I find very, very interesting. So having random tables to create the oddities, fine, yeah. Put some randomness in there. Force the DM out of their comfort zone as well as the players. Make it really, really horrific. Like that sort of thing. I think this sort of thing is why you get magazines. This sort of article. Oh, excuse me, but I need a vacation. See you next month. Is that Phineas Fingers? That's a shame. More random tables. There's your attack tables. So random powers, random abilities. That's all good. There's your convention schedule, because we were talking about the convention season. Are these all... I always look to see whether they're all American or not, whether any conventions have spread around the world, and they're all America. Right for the dungeon, become rich and famous. Only one part of that is true, and only mildly so. You wouldn't become rich. You might become famous, possibly, slightly amongst nerdery. More likely to become infamous as nerds gnash their teeth and write a letters page to say what an idiot you are. Damage permanency, or how Hrothgar One Ear got his name. These are things that should be kept simple and evocative, and they should represent the nature of the damage taken. So the only problem with having these completely random tables here is you've got to take into account what caused the damage and under what circumstances. So and under what circumstances do you force the impairment to happen? So without reading through all of these rules, there needs to be some logical basis behind it all, but it also needs not to impose on the game itself. And this is why I do think Merp did this pretty well. Um, Not everybody likes the combat tables in Merp, and aspects of the game are very slow and it's quite number crunchy. But I'm running it online on Roll20 at the moment, and Roll20 does a lot of that crunching for you, and it's made it very smooth and playable. And there's some love. I mean, the combat tables are infamous in Merp. There's some lovely evocative wounds that can be taken, and the critical tables, the injuries are based on the weapon type, and that works. So warhammers will crunch bones, and swords will slash tendons, and spears might puncture arteries, things like that. So it's one of those things. It's hard to get it right. So it area of the body damaged permanently. Okay. Effects. I mean, head damage because hearing loss, sight loss, speech impaired. Yeah. Let's see, that link's fine. But it's this bit that gets me. The area of the body damaged permanently. If you go down to 0 hit points or minus hit points, certainly using AD&D's bleeding out rules, and it's a giant rat that's done it, then it's going to be your legs and feet more likely, much more likely. And on this table, they're least likely. Trunk is more likely. And so if it's a halfling, then the giant rat might bite the trunk. But this is what I mean about them working. There's some description of all the stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's always an interesting discussion, and it's always nice to see some ideas. And I accept that this is all very much in its infancy at this point. This is 1979, so throw out the ideas, use them if you want to use them if you don't want to use them, but use them as inspiration. I mean, in our OSE game, we've got one of our best characters, 4th level cleric. He was the first character to reach 4th level, but he's Angus One Eye. He's got one eye left because his head was bitten. I can't remember what bit his head, but it was something that would suitably bite it. Was it giant bats? Can't remember, but it was something that would authentically go for the head part of a dwarf, and it worked in the moment, and the player has run with it from then onwards. And that's what you do with it. He's Angus One Eye. He's got one eye. Where's an eye patch? We need to know. So how did you become Angus One Eye? I lost my eye. How did that happen? I need to go into it. A story. Dungeons and Prisons, or a no tears formula for getting rid of high level characters. Ship them off to the keep. Give them royal type duties, feudal duties. Yeah, you're now a lord. You're in charge of this land area. There's 500 peasants, and you've got 50 an army of 50 spearmen. That's the rest of your life. Enjoy. All right. But since Dungeons and Prisons, a no tears formula for getting rid of high level characters. Tomb of Horrors did that. This is back to the story. International Dungeons and Dragons Design Competition, $400 in prizes. A lot of money back then. Contest for module writing, map drawing. What won this? I know Lawrence Schick sent off a load of his ideas and it became White Plume Mountain. Was that associated with this competition? Don't know. Be interested to find out. This is the fantasy again. Over £500 to be awarded at Gen Con Wargame Figure Painting Competition. So they're throwing these prizes out now. Carrots to entice nerds. Here. Well, and what will those nerds spend this money on? More figures, more books, more paints. Yeah, so it works. Give the nerd more money. The nerd will spend more money at conventions. I've spent enough money at the UK Games Expo over the last however many years. It happens. The Tribes of Crane is a game. There's an advert. This story's going on for too long. Keeps stopping and starting. It goes on for too long. How many pages of this fiction have we had so far? Gen Con status report. Already seen the advert for it, so we know it's going to happen. Pre-registration fees $10 for the entire convention. These fees have already gone up. Notice they were like $3 or $4 in the earlier issues, but it's becoming bigger. More big names are coming along. More is going on. So that's fair enough. And still, it's not a lot of money, is it? An adventure in search of the unknown. Take a trip with the dragon. The premier magazine of sorcery, science fiction, and that's it. We're at the end. How many pages was this one? 32. So we're back to regular size. We didn't have any of the cartoons in this one. Instead, we had an excessively long piece of fiction. There was quite a spread of articles, though, wasn't there? Quite a spread of articles. So let's go quickly look at this index. Sorcerer's Scroll, Dungeons and Prisons. Obviously, I've not read these articles, but that Sorcerer's Scroll one was about extra planar creatures, like that sort of thing. Thing from the Tomb, too long. It weighs what? I'm hoping the author of that followed the same logic as I talked about when I discussed it, because I didn't read the article. I just came up with my view of encumbrance. Good news for the gaming hobby. Convention schedule, Gen Con status report. They're all pretty nothingy, but information for nerds. On Guard, that has piqued my interest. I'll see if I can try and find that somewhere. Mind Wrestling, psionics, meh. Damage Permanency, interesting discussion on introducing ideas of lasting wounds. Water Adventures on Starship Warden, not my thing. Right, so I initially saw this index and I was quite positive. I don't want to be... No, I'll say it. It's not a strong issue. There's some good ideas in here, and there's some contentious talking points that are still talked about to today. What to do with high-level characters, lasting damage, that sort of thing. But it's the bulk of the content was the fiction. And that to me indicates that they didn't have a lot to talk about in the articles. I would buy this sort of magazine for articles, for ideas, adventures. I want adventure ideas, adventure seeds. Yeah, you might get some of that from the fiction. But hey ho, I want to. I mean, I know I ran the most recent White Dwarf down because it didn't have enough, but it did have an adventure seed in it, and that's what I want to see more of from magazines. Set piece encounters, adventures, small dungeons, new monsters, of course, new character classes, NPC character classes. I like those sort of things. They're interesting. So I think this is a bit of a disappointing issue. There are some interesting bits and bobs in here and things I will go back to, but it's not as good as the previous issue. It's still a little better than White Dwarf is at the moment, because White Dwarf has dipped. Well, that's my verdict. I might be right. If I'm right, Tell me in the comments below. If I'm wrong, tell me in the comments below. Either way, come along and play games in my Discord. Subscribe to the channel. Click a button to show whether you like or dislike the video. I've been the Old Geek. See ya.